Good day everyone. I'm going to present my report, the Philippine Coast Guard. And ano nga ba ang Philippine Coast Guard? The Philippine Coast Guard is an armed and uniformed service tasked primarily with enforcing laws within Philippine waters, conducting maritime security operations, safeguarding life and property at sea, and protecting marine environment and resources, and that is similar to Coast Guard. So, ang Philippine Coast Guard po is an armed and uniformed service na nakatalaga o namamahala sa pagpapatupad ng mga batas within Philippine waters. They conducting maritime security operations para po to ensure the safety of our country water. Then, ang Philippine Coast Guard din po ang nangangalaga and tumutulong sa pagprotekta sa buhay ng mga tao and property at sea. And sila rin po nagpaprotekta sa marine environment and resources, and that is similar to Coast Guards around the world. Then, the PCG po or the Philippine Coast Guard is used to be with the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Dati pong kasama ng AFP ang Philippine Coast Guards under the Philippine Navy bago po ito matransfer sa Department of Transportation. The Philippine Coast Guard is considered the third armed and uniformed service of the country. Then, it currently maintains a presence throughout the archipelago with 13 Coast Guard districts, 54 Coast Guard stations, and over 190 Coast Guard substations from Basco Batanes to Bungao, Tawi-Tawi. Then, we have two applicable legal bases. The RA or Republic Act number 5173 entitled An Act Creating a Philippine Coast Guard Prescribing its powers and functions, appropriating the necessary funds therefore and for other purposes. Then, dito po sa RA 5173, na-approve po ito on August 4, 1967. Ito po ay isang batas na ginawa upang lumikha at magtatag ng Philippine Coast Guard bilang isang pangunahing ahensya ng gobyerno na responsable sa pangangalaga ng kaligtasan at seguridad sa mga katubigan ng Pilipinas. Then the other one po is the Republic Act number 9993 entitled An Act Establishing the Philippine Coast Guard as an Armed and Uniformed Service attached to the Department of Transportation and Communication. Dito naman po is ang Republic Act 9993 po ay naitatag o nilagdaan on July 27, 2009. Then, dito po sinasabi sa Republic Act number 9993 na palakasin po ang kapangyarihan at kakayahan ng Philippine Coast Guard sa pagpapanatili ng kaligtasan at seguridad sa ating bansa. Then, we move po sa historical evolution. Then, the insular government through the Philippine Commission enacted a law on October 17, 1901 that created the Bureau of Coast Guard and Transportation or BCGT, which was placed under the Department of Commerce and Police. Then, so under po siya ng Department and Police, then ang tawag sa kanya ay Bureau of Coast Guard and Transportation. And the captain of the port was designated as Bureau Director. Dito po sa captain of the port, they are referring actually po doon sa Manila, yung pinaka-captain, doon po siya na-designate as the Bureau Director ng Coast Guard. And that was on the early years of the Americans in the country in 1900. Then, after some years po, the Bureau of Coast Guard and Transportation was abolished on October 26, 1905. And nag-create sila ng panibagong na Bureau of Navigation, which was then authorized to create a commission and enlisted service. Meaning po, na-authorize sila na kumuha at mag-recruit ng uniform members ng Bureau of Navigation and they adopted its own manual of courts martial pattern after the US Navy. Then, however, the the Bureau of Navigation was abolished again in December 1913, and the organization and functions of it were transferred to the Bureau of Customs and the Bureau of Public Works until the Commonwealth government. So, naging Bureau of Customs and the Bureau of Public Works po siya. Then, by the virtue of Republic Act 5173 and as amended by the Presidential Decree number 601, the Philippine Coast Guard was then a major unit of the Philippine Navy. Meaning po is naging military ang Philippine Coast Guard under the Philippine Navy. Then, it is tasked to preserve the maritime sovereignty over the island. Pag sinabing maritime sovereignty naman po, ibig sabihin yan, walang ibang mga bansa na pwedeng mangisda or mag-explore sa ating bansa without the authority coming from the Philippine government. Then, so, hindi sila na-assign for defense purposes but rather to secure the maritime sovereignty of the country. Then, during the time of former President Fidel V. Ramos, by virtue Executive Number 477 on April 15, 1998, the Philippine Coast Guard obtained autonomy in its operations and became a civilian line function agency attached to the Department of Transportation and Communication. Then, from the Philippine Navy, tinanggal siya, ginawa siyang civilian na line function pero uniform siya. Then, it sees the PCG as a maritime law enforcement agency able to adequately and effectively respond in the performance of its mandated functions. Meaning, nakilala na ang Philippine Coast Guard ay magiging bodied agency to adequately and effectively na makapag-respond sa anumang bagay patungkol sa maritime laws or maritime enforcement. Then, on September 2, 2014, DOTC issued Department Order number 2014 to 010 restructuring the organization of the Philippine Coast Guard to respond to its enhanced mandate, functions, and responsibilities. Then, sabi dito ay na-structure na and na-reorganize para mas magampanan nito ang kanilang mandate, functions, and responsibilities. Then, move po tayo dito sa mandates. We have the mandates, vision, and mission of the Philippine Coast Guard. Ang mandates po ng Philippine Coast Guard is the Philippine Coast Guard is mandated and responsible to perform maritime search and rescue, maritime law enforcement, maritime safety, maritime environmental protection, and maritime security. Then, its vision po is stated as, by 2028, Philippine Coast Guard is a world-class guardian of the sea committed to save lives, ensure safe maritime transport, cleaner seas, and secure maritime jurisdiction. Then, the mission statement is, we are a uniform armed service that implements and enforces national and international maritime safety, security, search and rescue, and maritime environmental protection laws in support of the integrated maritime transportation network, objectives, national security, and economic development of the Philippines. Then, dito na po tayo sa powers and functions. Then, the first one po is, the Philippines is a signatory to IMO conventions on marine pollution of 1973 and 1978. The Philippine Coast Guard, as provided for under RA or Republic Act number 9993, is the sole agency responsible for the Philippine implementation of the conventions with regards to oil pollution prevention, mitigation, and control through the conduct of marine pollution monitoring and control, enhancement of Philippine Coast Guard capability and oil spill response operations, and enforcement of all marine environmental laws and regulations. Then, sila po ang primary agency po for that matter. In case lang po, if merong mga activities sa dagat na makasira sa marine environment, ay sila ang nauna for the prevention, for the control, or for the mitigation of those hazardous activities. Then, si Philippine Coast Guard po ang may mandato o may responsibilidad na pangalagaan ang maritime or bodies of water na meron tayo. Then, the next one po is Maritime Law Enforcement or MARLEN, and implement laws on fisheries and poaching, immigration, tariff and customs, forestry, firearms and explosives, human trafficking, dangerous drugs and controlled chemicals, and to implement the revised penal code and all other applicable laws within the country's maritime jurisdiction and battle on transnational crimes. Then, dito po sa Marlen, pag may possibilities na mga illegal activities such as forestry, firearms and explosives, human trafficking, dangerous drugs, na pumapasok po sa ating bansa, pag may mga import po kasi yan, kailangan dadaan sa legal, sa seaport or sa airport, and dadaan po yan sa Bureau of Customs para makapagbayad ng appropriate taxes. Then, ang Philippine Coast Guard po ang magbabantay niyan whether they are violators so that they can apprehend or prosecute or file the necessary charges. Then, the next one po is Maritime Security or MARSEC. PCG contributes to maintain good order at sea by conducting regular patrols and surveillance for the safety of navigation of ships, to safeguard ships from illegal acts, and to promote freedom of navigation. Then, ito po ay ang constant patrolling nila. Ang trabaho po ng Philippine Coast Guard is mag-monitor sila and mag-conduct ng surveillance para safe po yung mga padaan na barko sa ating karagatan. Then, kapag may gustong mag-explore po sa atin at mag-utilize ng ating natural resources sa dagat, then ang Philippine Coast Guard po ang may authority to secure those things. Titignan nila if they are properly permitted or they are properly licensed and whether they are following the environmental laws. Then, the next one po is ang Maritime Safety or MARSAF. Function is designated to help prevent or minimize unnecessary loss of lives and properties at sea. Dito po sa Maritime Safety or MARSAF is ina-ensure ni Philippine Coast Guard ang safety ng lahat ng tao and lahat ng property in the sea. Then, the Philippine Coast Guard po is also responsible in issuing permits and supervises all marine salvage operations. Pag sinabi naman pong salvage operations, kapag may lumubog na barko, they are going to conduct salvage operation. Meaning, they are going to try to retrieve whatever they can retrieve po sa lumubog na barko. Then, it is mandated to destroy or tow floating hazards to navigation such as but not limited to illegal fish traps and vessels. Then, sa gitna po kasi ng dagat, may nilalagay silang mga fish traps na malalaki. Kapag mga hazardous po yun, ay pwedeng mag-cause ng accident sa mga dumaraan na barko or mga marine vessels. Then, gagawin po ng Philippine Coast Guard ay kanila itong tatanggalin or hilain para po may prevent ang maaaring mangyaring accident sa dagat. Then, lastly po is in accordance with the Convention of Safety of Life at Sea or SOLAS, Philippine Coast Guard is the National Maritime Search and Rescue Service of the country. Sinasabi po rito na ang Philippine Coast Guard ang Maritime Search and Rescue Service po natin kapag nagkaroon ng aksidente sa ating karagatan. Then, we move po sa organizational structure. Then, at the flag office po, the Philippine Coast Guard is headed by the commandant with the rank of admiral, and he or she po assisted by 2 deputy commandants, deputy commandant for administration and deputy commandant for operations, both po with the rank of vice admiral. Then sa central staff po, the central staff is headed by Chief Coast Guard Staff or TC CGS with the rank of Commodore. Then the central staff po are as follows: Deputy Chief of Coast Guard and Staff for Human Resources and Record, Deputy Chief on Coast Guard Staff for Intelligence and Law Enforcement, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Operations, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Logistics, and Deputy Chief on Coast Guard Staff for Plans, Programs, and International Affairs, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Controllership, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Community Retention Service, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Maritime Safety Services, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Marine Environmental Protection, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Ships and Aircraft Engineering, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Marine Communication, Weapons and Electronic Information System, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Education and Training, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Around Staff for Maritime Security and Law Enforcement Affairs, Deputy Chief of Coast Guard Staff for Strategic Studies and Modernization. Then sa Coast Guard District of the PCG po, we have the Coast Guard District Northeastern Luzon, Coast Guard District Northwestern Luzon, Coast Guard District National Capital Region to Central Luzon, Coast Guard District Southern Tagalog, Coast Guard District Palawan, and Coast Guard District Bicol. We have also Coast Guard District Eastern Visayas, Coast Guard District Western Visayas, Coast Guard and District Central Visayas, Coast Guard District Southern Visayas, Coast Guard District Northern Mindanao, Coast Guard District Southeastern Mindanao, Coast Guard District Southwestern Mindanao. And sa PCGs or Philippine Coast Guard Functional Command Units naman po is we have Maritime Security Command or MARSECOM, Marine Environmental Protection Command or MEPCOM, Maritime Safety Services Command or MSSC, Task Force Sea Marshals or TFSM, a composite team from the Philippine Coast Guard, Armed Forces of the Philippines, and Philippine National Police, the Coast Guard Aviation Force or CGAF, Philippine Coast Guard's Special Operations Force or CGSOF, then Philippine Coast Guard Auxiliary or PCGA. Then dito naman po sa recruitment and selection, to apply at the Philippine Coast Guard as an enlisted personnel or officer, a candidate must possess the following qualifications. Number 1 po is he or she po must be a natural born citizen of the Philippines. Kailangan po sa Pilipinas po pinanganak. Then mahalaga po na may good moral character. Then he or she po must be single, must be 18 to 26 years old for enlisted personnel or 21 to 26 years old naman po for the officer. Then kailangan po na may height po at least 5'4" for male and 5'2" for female. Then physically and mentally capable for training, and must pass the Philippine Coast Guard Aptitude Battery Test or PCGA BT. Then the Philippine Coast Guard goal po is to have a professional competent, skilled, and credible workforce who will shoulder the burden of guarding the country's vast coastline. Then, to attain this standard po, they require applicants for the non-officer position then have at least 72 units in college or at least completed at TESDA course relevant to Philippine Coast Guard mandates. Then, for officer candidate, a bachelor's degree is not enough. The applicant must be a PRC license holder or possess a civil service professionals examination. Eligibility upon application at the Philippine Coast Guard. And yun lang po. Thank you.